Hi there, I am Beth, this is Remark, and today we are going to talk about the Tournament of Books. Thank you for joining. I am so excited to talk again today about the Tournament of Books. This is an annual competition put on by the Morning News. What they do is they take the previous year's best books as deemed by them, and then they narrow those down to about 20 of their ultra favorites called the short list. And so the fun part comes in March, where they take those remaining short list of books and pit them against each other, March Madness style. Each weekday, a guest judge will come in, weigh in with their opinion on which book they think should move on to the next round in the brackets. And then all of us watching chime in the comments section, on Twitter, wherever, or on BookTube, talking about our favorites and how the judge got it just so wrong. So it's a lot of fun. It's really fun to see all of these literary people get so worked up and passionate, sometimes inflamed about the books that they love. So instead of going directly through my bracket like I usually do each year, I'm going to talk about a few of the books on the short list in particular that I really enjoyed. The first one I'm going to talk about is The Italian Teacher by Tom Rachman. You can check out my full-length video review of this book, and I highly recommend that if you haven't read it or listened to the audiobook that you do so post haste, because this is one of my favorite books that I read in 2018. It follows a man named Pinch. He starts as a boy. It follows him all through his coming of age and through adulthood. He is the son of a famous artist named Bear Bavinski. This is a man who is on par with, say, Pablo Picasso. He's one of the big names in the art world. Pinch seems to be his favorite, mainly because Pinch doesn't really demand anything of him. He just stares at him adoringly. He doesn't even really make demands of his love and affection, or even his time. All he wants to do is just adore his dad, and that suits Bear Bavinski just fine. When Pinch is little, he has designs on being an artist himself, taking on the lessons that his dad taught him and really flourishing. But his dad breaks him down with this proclamation of, "You'll never be an artist, kid." And from there, Pinch kind of struggles to find himself and find his identity, both in the art world and just as a person himself. He eventually just lands on being an Italian teacher. Now, this book is good because on its surface, it's just a heartbreaking saga following this guy who just can't seem to get it. He's just reaching, and never quite grasping. Now, when you look at his life as a whole, you could see it as an exercise in disappointment, or you can look at it and see it as this quiet triumph that Pinch ultimately had. He never had his name in lights. He never really had the validation that he should have had. But all of the things he wanted to do in life, he pretty much accomplished quietly, other than the self-serving things, which is kind of the sad part of it. But very good book. I really appreciate it. Now, this book has already been judged on the bracket and lost despite my predictions. I personally think that the reviewer got it wrong. But actually reading her review was very insightful and very good. It gave more insight to the book that beat it, The Milkman. Let me just talk about The Milkman for a minute. I wasn't really going to talk about that one so much, but let me just bring it up because that one was a DNF for me. I couldn't connect with the story, and every sentence seemed laden with meaning, and there comes a point that you gotta have more heft to the story. Now, I am definitely in the minority on that. The reviewer for the Morning News who reviewed the book thought it was quite eloquent. Everybody else I've talked to says give it a chance. To be honest, I was kind of in not the right headspace to be spending time with that book whenever I did in the first place. Maybe it's me, but I got the dread factor every time I went to pick it up. And so with The Italian Teacher, I enjoyed the hell out of that book. I loved spending time with Pinch. I loved seeing Horrible Bear and gaining insight into his complexities. The Milkman, it got to where I was taking forever to finish it because I just didn't want to pick it back up. It was too much. Yeah. So I don't know. Let me know if you've read The Milkman and give me your thoughts on that. Kind of interested to see some dissenting opinions. So far, all the opinions have told me that I'm definitely wrong, which that's fine. I'm willing to admit that. Okay, another one I'd like to talk about is Washington Black. This is a book that I'm a little bit further than halfway through, and what a captivating story this started out to be. It follows a young slave in Barbados in the 1800s named George Washington Black. He is befriended by the slave owner's brother, Christopher, Titch for short. Christopher kind of takes a liking to Wash, sees sort of a protege in him, and takes him under his wing. Now, I will say this book has kind of fallen apart a little bit for me since they left the plantation. But I will say up to that point, I've been hanging on every word. So where Wash's life goes is yet to be seen. And also I'm wondering if there's some sort of fantastical element to it. Kind of interested to see where it goes. So, good book so far. We'll see how it ends. The next book I want to talk about is Census by Jessie Ball, and this book kind of took me by surprise when I finished it. When I first finished it, my reaction was, that's it? It seemed to be a series of vignettes without any real connective tissue. Here's a quick breakdown of the story. It follows a doctor, I'm guessing like a small town doctor, who is diagnosed with a terminal illness. He decides to quit his job, take another job with a mysterious census company. Now, it's not your regular U.S. census. He takes his developmentally delayed son with him on this trip, thinking of it as like one last chance to see the country, one last chance to spend some serious time with his son. Along the way, he reminisces about his dead wife. He thinks about the future that his son might have, but mostly he just takes census information from house to house. And this was the part that, while the census taking seemed interesting enough, I didn't really understand where the story was going. There was no teary confessional, no sort of wisdom that was gained. There just seemed to be no point to it. And so it left me kind of frustrated when I ended the book. But it was after finishing the book and thinking on it for several weeks, and even now, several months later, it just keeps popping back into my mind from time to time. That makes me think that it's really kind of a quiet masterpiece. Of course, it doesn't have teary revelations because his son, who's developmentally delayed, would not understand or be able to process anything like that. He would probably be scared and intimidated by it. Of course, it doesn't really have any big pot of gold at the end of the rainbow because it's not about the end. The end is death. The end is nothingness. It's more about the journey and him just spending this extra time with his son and really seeing these pieces of Americana or wherever they are in the world. So, frustrating when I first read it, really beautiful thinking back on it. That book was a surprise to me in a delightful way. I really love it when books do that. Another book on the short list and in the brackets this year is So Lucky by Nicola Griffith. This is a book that's somewhat autobiographical about the author, but really it's a fictionalized story. It follows a woman named Mara who's really doing well professionally. She runs a not-for-profit AIDS foundation. Although she just got divorced from her wife, she's kind of on this burgeoning relationship with a friend turned more. In the midst of all of this, she finds out that she has multiple sclerosis, and so she has to deal with her body betraying her, her emotions betraying her, her job betraying her, just living in all of the stages of grief, living in her anger and using it to fuel her forward for a good portion of the book. She raged against the dying of the light. She was angry that she had this condition. She's angry about how her body is not doing what it's supposed to be doing. She's angry at the drugs that are so expensive and have side effects that are almost worse than the symptoms that they're treating. And it's just, that's the part of the book I really connected with. The part that I didn't connect with so much was this murder mystery subplot that they had going on. It really took away from the story, and the real story of this book is Mara. I would not, Honestly, every time the murder mystery stuff came up, I almost kind of skimmed through it in my head because it just, of course, murder is important, matters of life and death are important, but in this story I was kind of like, get back to Mara's story. So, good book with just that reservation. Good book. All right, now let's look at some brackets. So as I said before, I lost the round in which the Italian teacher was up against Milkman. You know what? I respect her opinion, and it was a very, very well-written decision that she did, so I cannot fault her for that. But you can see I'm already off to a bad start with my brackets. Oh, well. So I had predicted the Italian teacher to win against the Census beating Washington Black, but then Washington Black coming back a little bit later in a zombie round. On the other side, I see My Sister the Serial Killer going up against So Lucky, handily beating it, and There going up against Parking Lot Attendant, beating the parking lot attendant as well. I've heard many good things about There by Tommy Orange. I personally haven't read it yet. It's on my TBR. And so I'm really looking forward to getting to that because I have as the final two standers, Census and There. I was kind of surprised by this. I was not expecting these to be the final two, but them's the shakes. Ultimately see There taking it all, taking the grand prize, claiming victory. We will see if that happens. You know, sometimes I surprise myself by getting these brackets mostly right, and then there are years that I get them disastrously wrong. I'm already thinking I'm off to a bad start, so nah. Okay, so Tournament of Books, lots of fun. Thank you to the Morning News for putting this on for all of us book lovers. Thank you for the authors, of course, for putting out great content for us to bicker over. All right, thanks for watching, guys, and I will catch you next week. Bye. Another book that I want to talk about is, what is the other book I want to talk about? Let's find out.